Well, hello, my friend. Welcome to this module on expectations, where we unpack and dive into the realities that the right expectations for dating, relationships, and marriage will lead you to the right who. However, the wrong expectations will lead you to the wrong who. And expectations are one of those things that plague so many people. I mean, how often have you heard people say, reality or the relationship didn't live up to my expectations, or it's turned out so differently than what I had originally thought, or I saw us going this way and it ultimately came down to this way. So we want to be clear about what are expectations. Well, expectations are simply having a strong belief of what will happen in the future. So a strong belief, a vision, hopes for the future of that relationship. But so many of those expectations that we have accrued over the years are coming from varied sources, for better and for worse. Starting first and foremost with your family of origin is the biggest influence on your expectations for future marriage. What did that marriage look like that was modeled first and foremost between your mom and your dad? Or perhaps, again, this is one of those spaces where very few people are coming to the table with healthy expectations because they saw a healthy marriage modeled in their home. In fact, far more people are coming to the table with unhealthy expectations or a lack thereof because of a poor marriage model in their home. Perhaps their parents remained married, but unhappily so. Maybe they fought and bickered and it seemed like marriage was a nuisance and it was a major struggle. And then others came from homes where their parents divorced and perhaps remarried in a healthy way. And then they saw a later version of a marriage that could be modeled. But others, their parents divorced, went on, got married, and got divorced again. And then their cycle of habits and patterns come from a cycle of divorce and unhealth. And then others maybe came from single parent homes where they didn't even see a marriage at all model because they were being raised by only a mother or only a father. So we've got to be able to hit the reset button here and get some perspective, and hopefully God's perspective. Because if we remember, Satan's dangerous trap is to see things merely from a human point of view, not from God's point of view. And so many of our human point of view come from not just family of origin, but also our peers and relatives and nearby neighbors that we saw their marriages being modeled and lived out. But also how your friends and your close associates talk about dating, relationships, and marriage has a huge impact on you, whether you realize it or not. And then you're also accruing in expectations from media influences, whether that be social media influencers, maybe YouTube videos, could be films, TV shows, Netflix series, you name it, is that it's all setting a tone. Even music and musical lyrics are setting a tone for your expectations for relationships. And then finally, even your political positioning and the type of news or political associations that you have are going to frame and position your understanding and expectations for marriage and relationships. This is why that the Apostle Paul wisely writes in Romans 12, these two verses here to set us up with the stage here. For Romans 12:2, it says, "Do not copy the behavior and customs of this world." What's he saying? Do not copy the patterns of this world. We're caught up in the patterns of what we've seen, modeled, said, and we have heard. And it goes on to say, "But let God transform you into a new person, making you a new creation, allowing you to be born again by changing the way that you think, which is the renewing of your mind." And then it finishes with, "Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect." So when will you learn to know God's will for you, which is good and pleasing and perfect? When you have allowed for the renewing of your mind, when you've stepped out of the patterns of the world and into the patterns of heaven, set your sights on the realities of heaven, not the things of earth, that's when you will learn to know God's will, which is good and pleasing and perfect. So that's one of the very first steps that we have to take in expectations, is to step out of merely human thinking and to also just take a step back to get some perspective on the whole host of ways that we have been influenced for better and for worse. And you see this so often in the media, and we pick up little sayings and little myths along the way that are not setting up a healthy reality for our future relationships. So by failing to change the way that you think about dating, love, and marriage will ultimately affect what you end up experiencing. And so often, if you don't step out of those patterns, you will experience disappointments. So what we're trying to do here is to discern God's will for dating, love, and marriage. And then it's through that filter that we will be able to step into those healthy desires, healthy standards that we should set. Because this is also going with the expectations, is that expectations result in standards. And so if you have unrealistic expectations, you're going to end up with unrealistic standards, and ultimately you're going to end up lonely because nobody's ever going to live up to that. We have to allow for some grace in the right areas. But if you have too low of standards, too low of expectations, it leads to too low of standards, and those too low of standards then welcome in unhealthy people that are willing to take advantage of your low standards. So we got to be able to have some moderation here where we find the right zone of expectations, standards, and morals that we're asking people to live up to and to step into with us in our relationships. But we want to be able to establish those clearly around what would come from God's perspective and God's will, rather than our peers, our family of origin, the media, or political framing. So we're going to help you unpack this as we go in this module. I'm really looking forward to it. I think it's going to lead to a lot of freedom for so many that have struggled with family of origin influences for the worse. All right? So looking forward to taking you on this journey, and I'll see you in the next video. Hey, as a thank you for watching, liking, and subscribing, we got a free download just for you with a link in the description below. It's our 5 keys to successful dating cheat sheet. You're not going to want to miss these 5 critical components to attracting, dating, and marrying a godly spouse. So enjoy, God bless, and we'll see you in the next video.